This moment in Congress changed the conversation. Lawmakers aren't just criticizing ICE anymore. They're talking about impeachment, state violence, and whether democracy itself is being tested in real time.
Thank you, Representative Min. I now recognize Representative Emily Randall from my home state of Washington.
Thank you, Representative Jayapal. Across the country, we all watched from our phones as ICE murdered Renee Nicole Good in the streets of Minneapolis last week. The American people are fearful and angry. They're terrified. They're furious that the Trump administration is unleashing lawless agents on our neighborhoods, raiding an active forest firefighting operation in my district, and shooting people dead who dare to speak up and protest and ask questions. I refuse to let state violence committed by state police, not Minnesota State Police, but state police, go unchecked. Accountability is not optional. In my first year as a member of Congress, I successfully conducted 5 oversight visits to the Tacoma Northwest Detention Center in my district. Once, I was illegally denied entry. During these oversight visits, I heard directly from detainees, some of them legal permanent residents, many who have been in the U.S. for over a decade, that they're being denied proper medical care, that ICE and GEO agents regularly accompany detainees during medical appointments, exposing them to incredibly vulnerable moments in violation of their rights under HIPAA and counter to common practices of community doctors who, like Congresswoman Maxine Dexter, who visited with me once, see criminally incarcerated patients. This is part of a widespread problem that raises serious privacy concerns, serious training concerns, serious oversight concerns. We all saw in a viral video earlier this week an ICE agent following a detained individual into a porta potty. There is no situation that warrants this. This is in line with ICE training, or I should say a lack of training, that is empowering lawless agents across the country. And to make matters even worse, we all are hearing from tribal members, including those in my district, as well as Native people across Minnesota and across the country, that ICE is illegally detaining and targeting Native people for the color of their skin. Tribal members are being detained as leverage to convince tribal nations to sign agreements with ICE for enforcement on their sovereign territory. And that's why I'm an original co-sponsor of the Articles of Impeachment against Secretary Noem. Bad behavior begins at the top. If we want to ensure all individuals are treated with dignity, we have to ensure that there is competent leadership in place, and I have zero faith in Secretary Noem. Let me be clear. Using ICE agents to kill people in the streets is fascism, and I will use all the tools available to fight to defend our democracy and our collective future. New NBS reporting shows that ICE used AI in determining which agents needed how much more training. And in instances where individuals wrote about how badly they wanted to be an ICE officer, they got less training. Chief McCarthy, I'd like to hear a little bit more about the training your police force employs. I'm sure it's better than what we're seeing ICE be given. Are local officers typically trained to record interactions with their cell phones while holding a gun at the same time in the other hand?
Thank you for that question, and no, ma'am, they are not.
Are local officers typically trained to fire their guns into vehicles?
We are trained if we need to fire a weapon into a vehicle. However, most policy, including the state-wide model policy, warns against shooting into moving vehicles.
Yeah. There's probably some de-escalation in between saying please stop and shooting into a vehicle.
Yes, ma'am.
And speaking of de-escalation, are local police officers trained to de-escalate situations, or are they trained to shoot first?
We are trained to de-escalate situations.
So police officers for the city of Minneapolis, who are given more training than the federal agents, are keeping our communities safe. And I want to thank you for everything that you do to keep our communities safe. Thank you, Madam Chair.
What you're hearing in this moment from Congresswoman Emily Randall is not political theater, and it's not rhetorical escalation for clicks. It's a warning rooted in oversight, lived testimony, and the constitutional role of Congress itself. When she says accountability is not optional, she's pointing to something deeper than one tragic death or one abusive incident. She's describing a system that has slipped outside normal democratic guardrails and is now operating with force first and justification later. Oversight matters here, and that's something many viewers may not fully grasp. Members of Congress don't just write laws, they have the legal authority and responsibility to inspect federal facilities, question agencies, and expose misconduct. Randall's visits to the Tacoma Northwest Detention Center weren't symbolic, they were exercises of constitutional power. What she encountered there, detainees denied medical care, ICE and GEO agents present during medical appointments, and private health information exposed, isn't just unethical, it potentially violates federal privacy law and basic human rights standards. These are not isolated complaints from one facility, they mirror reports coming out of detention centers across the country. What makes this moment especially alarming is the pattern. Randall connects the dots between lack of training, lack of oversight, and lethal outcomes. When she references viral footage of an ICE agent following a detained person into a porta-potty, she's not highlighting shock for shock's sake. She's illustrating how normalized abuse becomes when agents are trained to see people as targets rather than human beings. When boundaries disappear in small moments, they disappear in larger ones too, including moments that end in death. Her warning about Native communities adds another layer viewers should not miss. Tribal nations are sovereign entities, yet Randall reports that Native people are being detained based on appearance and used as leverage to pressure tribes into enforcement agreements with ICE. If true, that represents a profound violation of sovereignty and civil rights. It also shows how expansive and unchecked power doesn't stop at one group. Once an agency is allowed to operate without accountability, it will test every boundary it can reach. When Randall invokes authoritarianism, she's not making a casual comparison. She's speaking as the daughter of immigrants who fled a regime where state violence became routine, where fear kept people silent, and where abuses were justified as security. Her point is that authoritarian systems don't arrive overnight. They grow when institutions excuse lawlessness because it's politically convenient, or when the public is told to accept abuses as the cost of order. Fear erodes trust, and as the police chief explains, that fear doesn't make communities safer, it makes crimes go unreported, victims invisible, and the most vulnerable even more exposed. This is why the call for impeachment matters in this context. Impeachment is not a personal vendetta, it's a constitutional mechanism for confronting abuse of power at the highest level. Randall's argument is simple but serious. If leadership tolerates or encourages lawless conduct, then leadership must be held to account. Bad behavior begins at the top isn't a slogan here, it's a diagnosis. At Left Lens, our goal is not just to show you what happened in the room, but to slow it down so you understand why moments like this matter long after the hearing ends. These conversations shape how power is exercised, how rights are protected, and whether government agencies answer to the people they claim to serve. If you value accountability, transparency, and human dignity, make sure you stay informed. Support independent political commentary by liking this video, sharing it with others who want context instead of spin, and subscribing to Left Lens. Your support helps keep these stories visible and the pressure on power where it belongs.